Welcome to Retirement Ramblings. I'm Scott. On today's video, we're going to discuss the Carnival Vista and a recent trip I took to Amber Cove, Dominican Republic, and Grand Turk in the Turk and Caicos Islands on the week of November 13th through 18th, 2023. If that sounds interesting to you, please stick around. The Carnival Vista is currently sailing out of Port Canaveral, Florida. As I'm based in the greater metropolitan Atlanta area, I chose to drive down to the port on the Sunday prior to the cruise sail date of November 13th and stay at a local hotel to simplify my transition over to the ship for embarkation. I had a scheduled arrival time of noon to 12:30, and so I checked out of the hotel at about 11:30 and made my way over to the port, where I had an easy time checking in the luggage with the porters and then driving over to the parking garage. Parking is $17 a day at the port, and that includes the day of departure as well as the day of arrival, even if they're partial days. And it's a prepay, so you are met by an individual with a credit card machine, and they take your payment before allowing you to enter into the parking garage. Once parked, you make your way into the cruise terminal, where you're checked on multiple occasions to make sure that you're only trying to access the ship during your embarkation window. The check-in process is pretty straightforward. You show your passport, your boarding pass to get onto the ship. Carry-on luggage is scanned, and then then you're sniffed by some dogs that are specifically looking for drugs, and then you make your way up the gangway and onto the ship, where your room will not be ready until 1:30, and so you can make your way to the Lido deck, where you can have lunch and prepare for the sail away party later that afternoon. The Vista had a variety of activities to keep young cruisers, those under 12, engaged. Things like a rope walk or putt-putt or billiards, video arcade, bag toss, sky ride, outdoor theater, and a water park, just to name a few. Adults, on the other hand, tended to engage in laying out by the pool, leveraging the jacuzzis, drinking some tropical drinks, using the exercise facilities, especially the outdoor track, and going to the spa facility. One of the main things that people look forward to on a cruise is the food. And unfortunately, on the Carnival Vista, I found it to be lacking in both quality and variety from the standpoint of upscale food. There was a wide variety of food, just not of the type of food that I personally enjoy. So I'm going to step you through a couple of days' menus, just so that you can get a view of the type of food that's offered and whether or not this would meet your criteria for food selection and variety each day. So on day one, we had appetizers that included braised lamb and duck rolls and shrimp cocktail, seasonal mixed salads, Caesar salad, tomato soup, and wild rice, Gruyere, and country chicken. For the entrees, we had Szechuan shrimp, which is what I had, and by the way, that was actually very good. One of the better meals I've had on the cruise. Also Cornish game hen, short ribs, pappardelle with braised lamb, vegetable Wellington, and the featured Indian vegetarian dish, and an ultimate Cobb salad. And then every day you could get either a grilled chicken breast or a broiled strip loin steak, which the child in our party consistently ate that every single day. That was his go-to, although I will say that the steak was more like something you'd expect at Western Sizzlin', and we had to literally saw through the steak. It was so tough to cut, but he didn't have a problem actually finishing it, so at least that part was good. If you wanted something like surf and turf or filet mignon or New York strip or grilled lamb chops, anything like that, there was a surcharge of $23 per entree to get that type of food. And then for dessert, they had cheesecakes, orange cake, this unique Carnival melting chocolate cake, tropical fruit, various ice cream and sorbets, and a cheese plate that you could get. On the morning of the second day, we decided to try the Sea Day brunch and made our way to the main dining room to be served, one of the brunch options. We found that the wait was extensive. We had to wait about 45 minutes to get in. And then once we were seated, we had to wait about another 30 minutes to be able to even place our order and then ultimately get the food. I'm showing you obviously a sample of the menu on the screen at the moment, which included a bread basket, some cereals, the classic kind of brunch items like Eggs Benedict, and then, a variety of salads, things along those lines. If you wanted anything special like beignets or a lobster Benedict or something like that, there was an extra charge for those items. I ended up having the Eggs Benedict, and even after all that wait, it was delivered basically lukewarm to cold, and I didn't enjoy it at all. And, when I was looking around the other tables in our area, people were getting the same basic things that we were ordering and having generally the same results. So while conceptually I thought it would be a good idea, in practice, not very enjoyable at all. Entrees on day 2 included crawfish fettuccine, grilled jumbo shrimp and fish cakes, chicken cordon bleu, slow-cooked prime rib, roasted vegetable lasagna, and a featured Indian vegetarian dish. I ended up having the crawfish fettuccine, and unfortunately, the dish wasn't very good. On day 3, we decided to indulge in a specialty restaurant and went to Fahrenheit 555, which is the steak restaurant on board. And for me and my wife, we had a surf and turf that started with a lobster bisque and then went on to the surf and turf. And then I had a side of mushrooms and ultimately ended the meal with an apple tart. And the meal ended up costing us $96 for the two of us. And while the meal was good, the amount of food actually provided for the money was very small portions, as you'll be able to see in the images that I'm sharing with you. On the 4th day of the cruise, the entrees consisted of chicken parmesan, barbecued pork spare ribs, peppered steak, linguine and clams, artichoke and potato cheesecake, and a featured Indian vegetarian dish. None of these were particularly appealing to me, so I settled for just 4 appetizers for my meal, which consisted of stuffed mushrooms, linguine and clams, a French onion soup, and a shrimp cocktail. I ended the meal with a scoop of vanilla ice cream with chocolate syrup on top to wash down the appetizers. On the last day of the cruise, I was expecting entrees that would be the over-the-top entrees that, on other cruise lines you would expect, whether it be lobster or escargot or something that was, more fine dining type of activities. The cruise ended with the choices of pan-seared barramundi, jerk spiced pork chops, braised beef brisket, penny mariscos, enchiladas, and a featured Indian vegetarian dish. The one thing that was consistent was the offering of baked Alaska for dessert. For me, I ended up going with their featured salad, which was an Asian chopped salad with chicken, and the Asian house dressing was pretty tasty, but at the same time, very spicy. In any event, for the last night of the cruise, to set the tone of you remembering the food, it wasn't what I expected. One thing I did appreciate was on the last day of the cruise, and they may have had this on other days, but I didn't see it on the schedule, which doesn't mean it wasn't there, I just didn't see it. They had high tea on the high seas. And so at 3 o'clock, you're able to go to the main dining room and have tea and crippets and scones and a variety of, associated, I'll call them tapas, but little small dishes to go along with your tea. And they had a server coming around offering you a variety of different teas, to put in a pot of water. What they didn't tell you, though, until after you picked a packet of tea and that you ripped it open, was that there was going to be a charge for the tea bag. And if you just said that you wanted, just plain black tea and you didn't want flavored tea or something, then one of the guys would reach into their pocket and take out a Lipton tea bag and make it available to you at no charge. But if you took any of the tea bags that were presented to you as they were walking around, there was a charge that was associated with that you weren't made aware of in advance of actually opening the container, which I thought was in poor taste. But in any event, the actual presentation and the little morsels that they gave you to eat made it enjoyable, 30 minutes to an hour where you could sit there, have a pot of tea, have your little morsels, and then relax with your companions. So that, I did appreciate. From an entertainment perspective, the cruise offered a variety of musical acts that covered country, what I'll call easy listening, contemporary, as well as things like Motown. So there was a little bit of something for everyone.
Doors need a shut, lights need a cut, lips need a lock, boots need a knock, yeah.
In addition to musical entertainment, they also had a couple of comedians on board. One was very good, one not so much. And lastly, on the live entertainment side, they had crew-based stage entertainment. You'd have to decide whether that was something that you'd enjoy or not. For me, I actually get up and walked out. During the cruise, they did provide some high-quality movie entertainment that consisted of things like Barbie, Mission Impossible, Transformers, among others. The only downside is they don't offer free popcorn. If you want a bag of popcorn, it's about $4.87. That was a disappointment. The itinerary on this cruise had 2 stops, one in Amber Cove, Dominican Republic, and the other in Grand Turk in the Turks and Caicos Islands. When we arrived in Amber Cove, I just filmed the location from my balcony. I never even got off the ship to take the time to go into Amber Cove. I did speak to others who went on shore, and they seemed to like it. It was mostly, like other islands in the Caribbean, about shopping and beaches. That being said, other members of my party did go on shore and went to the Monkey Land excursion, which they seemed to enjoy. The only negative part of that trip was when one of the monkeys decided to defecate on one of my colleagues. It's a breezy day here at the Grand Turks. As with Amber Cove, Grand Turk was all about shopping and the beaches. But one of the excursions that one of my colleagues took was a snorkeling and stingray adventure. The snorkeling wasn't that great because the water was fairly rough where they were taken, and so they were having a hard time actually being able to snorkel and breathe effectively during the excursion. But they did love the stingray adventure that was associated with that particular excursion, as they were, right off the beach at that point in time where they were interacting with the stingrays. Before I give you my closing thoughts on this cruise, there is one thing that I'd like to highlight that I'm sure is an offshoot of the COVID pandemic, and that has to do with the CleanTech technology they use to allow you to clean your hands before entering into the dining room. In 12 seconds, following you putting your hands in this gizmo, soapy water is shot between all your fingers and across your hands, and in 12 seconds, you come out effectively sanitized. It was really an interesting invention to see in practice. Now let's discuss the cost of the cruise. Since I was driving down from the greater Atlanta area to Port Canaveral, I drove down on Sunday and stayed at a hotel with parking. One night cost me $228.07. On the way down, I had a meal at Sonny's Barbecue. That meal was $50.57. The prepaid parking at Port Canaveral was $109.14 for the 5-day cruise. The cruise itself, with a Category D balcony room in the aft portion of the ship, was $1,758. The taxes, fees, and port charges were $232.40. The vacation protection for 2 adults was $218. We prepaid the gratuities for 2 adults, which was $160. I paid an additional $30 to our stateroom attendant in cash, in addition to the prepaid gratuities, because she did such a phenomenal job. And quite honestly, I don't think the rest of the crew was worth the $160 that we paid, but that's another story. My wife also got the premium Wi-Fi plan for one device so that she could play Facebook games. And I will tell you that even with the premium plan, which is their highest performance plan, it was not sufficient for her to play her normal games on an iPad successfully. So it was $93.50, which for the most part was a waste for the week. We then purchased a chat plan, which was $5 a person for 2 adults or $10 total. We ate at a specialty restaurant, which was the Steakhouse Fahrenheit 555. That was $96. We also tried the Seafood Shack, which is also considered a specialty restaurant. We had buffalo shrimp and a lobster roll, and that was $33.04. We consumed a total of 4 alcoholic beverages while on board for $35.40. The gasoline for our vehicle to drive down and back was $117.76. And a post-cruise meal on the way home at an Olive Garden was $39.11. So in total, for a trip that had a duration of 7 days, it cost us $3,210.99 or $229.36 per person per day. So in conclusion, I'd like to give you my unbiased opinion about the aspects of this cruise. And while I'd like it to be unbiased, it can't be, because I've been on approximately a dozen cruises, and in general, I would rank this as the worst cruise I've ever taken. But that being said, I do want to point out what I did find to be a pro, as well as the cons associated with the ship. And so for the pros, I'm going to start off with the room size and layout. It was a decent room size. I liked the layout. The balcony was large enough to have 2 chairs and a table. We were also able to get the cabin steward to unlock the divider between the rooms. We had a large group, so we had adjacent rooms, so we were able to open up all the gates and be able to walk down the balconies for multiple rooms so that we could interact with each other without having to go out into the hall. So that was a significant pro. I'd also say that the bedding was very comfortable. The service that was provided by the stateroom attendant was excellent. If you are looking to be able to go to a bar to have yourself an adult cocktail, there's plenty of bars available throughout the ship to service you. I also think they had a good musical variety. They had plenty of activities for junior cruisers. That was probably the high point on the ship. If you have someone that's, preteen, probably lots of activities they'll like to do. Also, several of the people that went on the cruise with me took advantage of a spa massage, and they really liked the spa masseuse who performed the massage. So at least 3 separate people had that and talked very highly about the service they received in the spa. And then the ease of entry on and off the ship while in port was a significant pro. It was very easy to get on and off with your ship card. Now, for some of the cons. This might seem ridiculous, but this is the first ship I've ever been on that didn't have dedicated service elevators for staff use. And so on the day of embarkation as well as debarkation, half the elevators on the ship were shut down so that the crew could use them to move luggage across, throughout the ship. Even when they were fully in use, there was limited accessibility across the decks, and there were many guests on this particular cruise that required walkers and had powered scooters that had to have access to the elevators. So there were always long lines, and there was only a limited number of people that could get into the elevator when someone had obviously a walker or scooter. So that was a significant con. Also, this is the first cruise where I've had a room in the aft portion of the ship. I normally do the forward or midship, and there was significant vibration in the stateroom in the aft portion of the ship. So I would never get an aft room ever again. I presume that the vibration was caused by spinning of the propellers and the vibration going through the shaft that then made its way up through the floors of the ship. The other thing that was really disappointing was the service level in both the main dining room as well as the Lido Marketplace. I really felt that the service quality was just downright horrible. And then there was a general feeling across all of the folks that were joining me on this particular cruise that we were being nickeled and dimed, meaning, every single thing that you normally would expect to get on a cruise. Like you buy a package drinks, you would expect to get a souvenir glass to be able to refill throughout your cruise. Every other cruise I've ever been on, that was the way it worked. Well, not here. You bought the package and then they came and charged you for every souvenir glass. And they literally, that's the only time you saw the people for service was trying to sell you another souvenir glass. So that just, really irked me. And then I've said earlier, if you wanted popcorn while you're watching a movie, it was $4 a bag plus 18% gratuity. So I think it worked out to be $4.87, something like that, for a bag of popcorn. The only drinks that you could get on the ship that didn't cost you extra were iced tea and lemonade and water, and everything was self-serve, which that was fine. And then you could also get soft serve ice cream and yogurt, that was included. And then, there's a list of restaurants that included things like Guy's Burgers was included. There was a burrito, I think it was called Blue Iguana, that was included. So there were some venues around the pool areas that were included that had, reasonable offerings. The other thing that I thought was a con was the My Time dining was really poorly implemented. You'd send in your request, it would tell you kind of where you were in line, but when you would get there, you'd have long waits to actually be able to be seated. On the first night, I think it took an extra hour to get seated at a table. Then, as I previously indicated, the Wi-Fi service was poor even with the premium plan, so highly recommend not investing in Wi-Fi unless all you want to do is send an email. And then there's no notifications that are presented when you use their chat function within the app, which costs you $5 per person. So you could send notices saying, oh, I'm in this room, or I'll meet you up by the pool, but the person would never get the notification unless they literally were constantly looking at the app and stayed in a notification center. Otherwise, there was no vibration, there was no pop-up, there was nothing to indicate that you had gotten a notice. Then the debarkation process was highly unorganized. It took over 3 hours to get exited off the ship. So we were supposed to be off the ship by 9:30 in the morning. We didn't get off the ship until 11:15. So really disappointed in the way that the debarkation function worked. And then the last con, was the overall cost to value proposition. I just thought that for what you got, there was plenty of other options that you could, endeavor to take where you would get more value for the dollars. So unless you were really wanting to go someplace warm during, cold winter months, you wanted to sit around the pool and sunbathe and basically drink yourself into oblivion. If that's what your goal is, then this ship will absolutely meet your requirements. If it's something beyond that, it's questionable whether you will like the outcome that you get or not. And so, I hope that what I've shared with you at least gives you a small taste of what it's like to be on this particular ship and enough information that you can assess between this and the marketing materials and other people's reviews whether or not this is the cruise for you. I hope you've enjoyed the information and found it valuable. Thanks for sticking around to the end. Take care.